Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the screen. The woman smiling back at him in those photos, wrapped around another man, wasn't supposed to be anyone he knew. But she was. She was Olivia. His fiancée. The woman who wore his grandmother's ring. The woman who had whispered promises into his ear just 3 nights ago about their future, their children, their forever. But there she was in Brian's bed, in Brian's arms, doing things that made Ethan's stomach turn inside out. Brian, her ex-boyfriend, had made sure every angle was captured, every moment documented, and then he'd sent it all to Ethan with a message that read, "She never stopped being mine." Have you ever trusted someone so completely that losing them felt like losing a part of yourself? Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ethan's penthouse office as he sat frozen in his leather chair. The city stretched out below him, millions of lights twinkling like stars that had fallen to earth, but he'd never felt more alone. For 3 days now, he'd carried this secret like a stone in his chest. He hadn't confronted Olivia. Hadn't screamed or thrown things or demanded answers. He just watched her move through their home, laughing at dinner, asking about his day, kissing him goodnight, all while knowing what she'd done. Ethan Cole wasn't always a billionaire. There was a time when he counted pennies, when he worked 3 jobs to keep his mother's medical bills paid after his father died. His dad, Richard Cole, had been a factory supervisor, an honest man who taught Ethan that your word was worth more than gold. When cancer took him at 47, he left behind a grieving wife, a struggling son, and one piece of advice: build something that matters, son. Not just money. Build a life you're proud of. So Ethan did. He started with nothing but an idea and a borrowed laptop. He built software that revolutionized supply chain management. 10 years of 18-hour days, of sleeping in his office, of missing birthdays and holidays. But he did it with integrity. He treated every employee fairly, paid them well, never cut corners or stepped on backs to climb higher. The money came, eventually. Millions first, then hundreds of millions, then the kind of wealth that put him on magazine covers. But the money never changed who he was inside. His mother, Patricia, made sure of that. She still lived in their old neighborhood, still volunteered at the community center, still reminded Ethan every Sunday over dinner that kindness costs nothing and means everything. She'd loved Olivia from the moment they met. "She sees you, not your bank account," Patricia had said with tears in her eyes at the engagement party. "That's rare, sweetheart. Hold on to that." Ethan had believed it too. Olivia had been different from the others, the women who suddenly found him fascinating after his first million, who laughed too loud at his jokes and touched his arm too often and asked about his investment strategies over cocktails. Olivia had met him at a charity gala, and when he'd introduced himself as just Ethan, she talked to him for 2 hours about books and travel and her dream of opening an art gallery, never once asking what he did for a living. When she finally found out, she'd actually seemed uncomfortable. "I don't want people to think that's why I'm with you," she'd said quietly. "I liked you before I knew. I need you to believe that." And he had. God help him, he'd believed every word. The office door opened and there she was. Olivia walked in wearing a cream-colored dress that hugged her curves, her dark hair falling in waves over her shoulders, carrying 2 cups of coffee like she did most evenings when she knew he was working late. The smile on her face was warm, genuine, the same smile that had made him fall in love with her in the first place. "You've been quiet lately," she said, setting his coffee down and perching on the edge of his desk. "Everything okay with the Tokyo deal?" Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, searching for some sign of guilt, some crack in the mask. But there was nothing. Just Olivia, beautiful and concerned, playing the role of devoted fiancée so perfectly it made him want to scream. "Fine," he managed. "Just tired." She reached out and ran her fingers through his hair, a gesture so familiar it usually brought him comfort. Now it felt like a violation. "You worked too hard. Come home early tomorrow. I'll cook that pasta you love, we can watch a movie, just relax together." The pasta he loved. The movie nights. The future they'd planned. All of it was contaminated now, poisoned by what he knew. "Sounds good," he lied. Olivia kissed his forehead and left, taking her coffee and her perfect performance with her. The moment the door closed, Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He couldn't keep living like this, pretending everything was fine while dying inside. But confronting her meant making it real, meant destroying the life he'd built, meant admitting he'd been a fool. His phone buzzed. Another message from Brian. This one was a video. Ethan's finger hovered over it, some part of him screaming not to look, but he couldn't help himself. He pressed play and immediately wished he hadn't. Olivia's voice, breathy and passionate, saying things to Brian she'd never said to him. The video was time-stamped. 2 nights ago. while Ethan had been in Seattle closing a deal, trusting her completely. He threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, the screen cracking but not breaking, Brian's face still visible, smirking at the camera like he'd won some kind of game. The next morning Ethan arrived at work early, before the sun had fully risen, before the city had woken up to its usual chaos. His assistant Karen wouldn't be in for another hour. The cleaning crew was just finishing up. He noticed one of them, a young woman probably in her mid-20s, scrubbing the conference room windows with the kind of focus most people reserved for far more important tasks. He'd seen her before, always working quietly, always thorough, but he'd never really paid attention. Now, watching her work with such dedication for a job most people would consider beneath them, something stirred in his chest. A memory of his mother, scrubbing floors in an office building when his father got sick, doing whatever it took to keep their family afloat. The young woman turned and startled when she saw him. "Oh, Mr. Cole. I'm so sorry, I didn't know anyone was here yet. I'll get out of your way." "It's fine," Ethan said. "You're doing a good job." She blinked, surprised. Most executives probably didn't notice the cleaning staff at all, let alone compliment them. "Thank you, sir. I try my best." "What's your name?" "Iris, sir. Iris Chin." "How long have you worked here, Iris?" "About 6 months. I do the night shift usually, but I picked up some morning hours this week. Saving up for my mom's surgery." There was again that echo of his own past. A daughter working herself to exhaustion for a mother who needed her. Ethan found himself wanting to know more, but Karen's voice echoed from the hallway, and the moment broke. "I should finish up," Iris said quickly, gathering her supplies. Ethan nodded and walked to his office, but something had shifted inside him. Maybe it was seeing someone so genuine after days of living with Olivia's lies. Maybe it was recognizing something pure in a world that suddenly felt rotten. Whatever it was, he couldn't shake the image of Iris and her quiet determination. The day dragged on in a blur of meetings and phone calls. Ethan went through the motions, approving budgets and reviewing contracts, but his mind was elsewhere. Every time his phone buzzed, his heart raced, expecting another message from Brian, another piece of evidence of Olivia's betrayal. But nothing came. Just silence, which somehow felt worse. At lunch, he canceled his usual reservation at the French restaurant Olivia loved and instead walked to a small diner 3 blocks away, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting for hours. He needed normal. He needed real. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes and worn hands, brought him a burger without asking what he wanted. "You look like you need comfort food, honey," she said. Ethan almost laughed. If only she knew. That obvious? 20 years serving food teaches you to read faces. Rough week. You could say that. She patted his shoulder the way his mother used to. Whatever it is, it'll pass. Everything does, eventually. Ethan wasn't so sure, but he appreciated the sentiment. He ate his burger alone, watching people come and go, normal people with normal problems, and for a moment he envied them. Money was supposed to make life easier, but right now it felt like all it had done was attract the wrong kind of people and put him in a position where he couldn't trust anyone. That evening, as he returned to the office to grab some files he needed to review, he saw Iris again. She was in the break room, sitting alone with a homemade sandwich and a thermos of what looked like tea, reading a worn paperback. Something about the scene touched him. The simplicity of it. The contentment on her face despite the obvious poverty evident in her patched jacket and scuffed shoes. "Good book?" he asked from the doorway. Iris jumped, nearly dropping her sandwich. "Mr. Cole? I'm sorry, I should eat in the staff room downstairs, It's fine. Really. I was just curious about the book." She held it up, looking embarrassed. It was a classic, Pride and Prejudice. "I've read it a dozen times. I know it's old-fashioned, but I love the way she writes about people, about seeing past first impressions to who someone really is underneath." Ethan found himself smiling for the first time in days. Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. "You've read it?" "My mother's favorite. She used to say it was a story about learning to see clearly, to look past money and status to what really matters." Iris's whole face lit up. "Exactly. That's exactly what it's about. Most people think it's just a romance, but it's really about perception and truth and..." She stopped abruptly, her cheeks flushing. "Sorry? I get carried away sometimes." "Don't apologize. It's refreshing actually. Talking to someone who's passionate about something real." They talked for a few more minutes about books and life and dreams, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Connection. Real, honest connection with another human being who wanted nothing from him except conversation. When Iris finally had to get back to work, Ethan watched her go, pushing her cleaning cart down the hallway with the same focus and dedication he'd noticed that morning. An idea began forming in his mind. Crazy maybe. Possibly foolish. But he was tired of being lied to, tired of wondering who he could trust. He wanted to test something. No, not something. Someone. But not Iris. Not yet. First, he needed to see if his instincts about people were completely broken or if there was still part of him that could recognize genuine goodness when he saw it. That night, Ethan went home to the penthouse he shared with Olivia. She was in the kitchen, exactly where she'd promised to be, making pasta from scratch, humming along to music playing from her phone. The scene was so domestic, so perfect it made his chest ache. "Hey you," she said brightly when he walked in. Perfect timing. "Dinner's almost ready." Ethan poured himself a drink, watching her move around the kitchen with practiced ease. She was good at this, he realized. The performance. The role of loving girlfriend. She'd probably been practicing with Brian too, playing whatever part he wanted. "I've been thinking," Ethan said carefully. "About us. About the wedding." Olivia's hands stilled for just a fraction of a second before continuing to stir the sauce. "Oh? What about it? I want to move it up. Why wait another 8 months? Let's get married next month." Now she did stop, turning to face him with wide eyes. "Next month? Ethan, that's really fast. We have so much planned, the venue, the caterer, my dress isn't even." "We can make it work. I'll hire as many planners as we need. Money's no object. I just..." He moved closer, studying her face. "I don't want to wait anymore. Do you?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning she couldn't possibly understand. Was she planning to keep this charade going all the way to the altar? Or would she find a way to back out, to end things before it got that far? "Of course not," Olivia said finally, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I want to marry you too. I'm just surprised, that's all. Next month is so soon." "Too soon." No, not too soon. Just unexpected." She kissed him and he let her, tasting the lie on her lips. "If that's what you want, then yes. Let's do it. Let's get married next month." Ethan nodded, pulling away. "Great. I'll call the planner tomorrow." He wouldn't, of course. There would be no wedding. But he wanted to see how far she'd take it, how long she'd keep pretending. Part of him, some small desperate part, still hoped he was wrong, that there was some explanation for those photos and videos that would make sense. But deep down he knew better. The next few days were torture. Olivia threw herself into sudden wedding planning with enthusiasm that seemed genuine. She showed him pictures of flowers and talked about honeymoon destinations and called her friends with excited updates about the date change. Every moment of it felt like a knife twisting deeper. Ethan threw himself into work, staying late every night, avoiding the penthouse as much as possible. And every evening, he noticed Iris quietly doing her job, never complaining, never asking for anything. She'd smile at him sometimes, a shy, genuine smile that asked nothing of him, and it was like oxygen in a room where he'd been suffocating. One night, working later than usual, Ethan made a decision. He took out his wallet and removed his black American Express card, the one with no limit, the one that gave him access to anything money could buy. He turned it over in his hands, thinking about what his father had said about testing character. "Money doesn't change who people are," Richard Cole had told him once. "It just reveals who they were all along. Give someone power and you'll see their true nature." Ethan had tested Olivia without meaning to. He'd given her access to his wealth, his world, and she'd shown him exactly who she was underneath the beautiful exterior. Now he wanted to test someone else. Someone who had no reason to be kind to him, no reason to be honest, someone who could take advantage and probably never get caught. He wanted to test Iris. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the office before dawn again, knowing Iris would be finishing her night shift. He found her in his office, carefully dusting his bookshelves, treating each item like it mattered. "Iris," he said, and she turned, startled as always. "Mr. Cole. I'm almost done, I'll be out of your way in just a... I need your help with something." She blinked. "Sir?" Ethan pulled out his black card and held it out to her. Iris stared at it like he was offering her a live snake. "I need you to run an errand for me," he said. "My mother's birthday is coming up, and I've been too busy with work to shop for her. I want you to take this card and buy her something special. Something from the heart. Can you do that?" Iris didn't take the card. "Mr. Cole, I couldn't. That's not part of my job and I wouldn't know what to buy, and that card... Sir, that's your personal..." "I trust you," Ethan said, surprised to find he meant it. "You remind me of her, actually. Working hard, taking care of your family, staying genuine despite difficult circumstances. I think you'd know exactly what would make her happy. Please. It would mean a lot to me. Slowly, hesitantly, Iris reached out and took the card. It looked foreign in her work-worn hands, this symbol of unlimited wealth. What should I spend? She asked. Whatever feels right. There's no limit on that card. Just get her something you think she'd love. Iris's eyes went wide. No limit? Mr. Cole, I can't. What if I trust your judgment, he repeated. Take the day off. Go shopping. Bring me whatever you find by tomorrow morning. He could see the war happening behind her eyes. The temptation probably. The fear of making a mistake. The awareness of what she was holding, the power of it. Okay, she said finally. I'll do my best, sir. Thank you for trusting me. Ethan nodded and watched her go, his black card disappearing into her jacket pocket. Part of him wondered if he'd ever see it again. Part of him wondered if he'd just made a terrible mistake. But mostly he wondered what she would do with it. Would she prove him right about there still being good people in the world? Or would she prove Olivia right about everyone having a price? The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Ethan tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting to Iris and his credit card. He could track the purchases if he wanted to, see exactly what she bought and when and where. But he didn't. This was a test of trust, and checking up on her would defeat the purpose. Olivia called 3 times that day, chattering about wedding details, about the dress alterations she was scheduling, about the guest list they needed to finalize. Each call felt more surreal than the last. How could she sound so happy, so excited, while betraying him with Brian? How could anyone be that skilled at deception? I love you, she said before hanging up from the last call. Love you too, Ethan replied automatically, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. That evening, alone in his office, Ethan finally pulled up his credit card activity. His finger hovered over the screen, heart pounding. Whatever he found would tell him something important, not just about Iris but about whether his ability to judge character was completely destroyed or if there was still hope. He pressed the button. The screen loaded. And what he saw made his breath catch in his throat. The numbers on the screen swam before Ethan's eyes as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. His black American Express card, the one with no spending limit, the one he'd handed to Iris that morning with complete uncertainty about what would happen, showed only 3 transactions. 3. The first was for $67 at a medical supply store. The second was for $43 at a grocery store. The third was for $18 at a pharmacy. Ethan stared at the total. $128. Out of unlimited funds, out of the ability to buy literally anything she wanted, Iris had spent $128. He leaned back in his chair, his hands shaking slightly as the weight of what this meant settled over him. She could have bought designer clothes, expensive jewelry, a new car if she'd wanted. She could have maxed out purchases at luxury stores and he wouldn't have blinked. That was the whole point of the test, to see if unlimited access to wealth would reveal greed or corruption or selfishness. But Iris had spent barely enough for a nice dinner for 2. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text message from the building's night security. Miss Chin is here to see you, sir. Should I send her up? His heart hammered in his chest as he typed back yes. Whatever Iris had bought, whatever she brought back, would tell him everything he needed to know. Not just about her, but about whether he could still recognize genuine goodness when he saw it, whether Olivia's betrayal had completely destroyed his ability to trust. The minutes waiting for Iris to arrive felt like hours. Ethan stood and paced his office, the city lights stretching endlessly below him, millions of lives being lived in those buildings, people loving and lying and struggling and surviving. Somewhere out there, Olivia was probably with Brian right now, continuing her double life, planning a wedding to one man while sleeping with another. The thought made him physically ill. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his dark thoughts. Iris stood in the doorway, looking nervous and exhausted, carrying 2 shopping bags that looked decidedly modest compared to what she could have been carrying. Her jacket was the same patched one she always wore, her shoes the same scuffed sneakers. If she'd bought anything for herself, she wasn't wearing it. Mr. Cole, she said quietly. I brought everything. I hope it's okay. I tried to think about what would really matter, what would really mean something. She set the bags down on his desk and stepped back, wringing her hands anxiously. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw none of the calculation he'd seen in Olivia's eyes, none of the performance. Just genuine concern that she'd done the right thing. Tell me what you got, he said softly. Iris took a deep breath and pulled items from the first bag. Okay, so, I thought about what you said about your mother being like me, working hard and taking care of family. And I thought about my own mom, about what would make her feel loved and seen and valued. Not expensive things but thoughtful things. She held up a compression sleeve. This is a medical-grade compression sleeve for arthritis. My mom has it in her hands from years of cleaning work, and these help so much with the pain. I thought maybe your mother might have the same issue. A lot of women who've worked with their hands do. It's not fancy, but it makes a real difference in daily life. Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. His mother did have arthritis. She'd mentioned it just last month, how her hands ached after her volunteer work, how she didn't want to complain because so many people had it worse. He'd offered to take her to specialists to get her the best treatment money could buy, but she'd waved him off, saying it was just part of getting older. Iris continued, pulling out more items. This is a recipe journal. I got it because you mentioned she likes to cook, and I thought maybe she has family recipes that aren't written down anywhere. My grandmother had all these amazing recipes in her head, and when she passed they were just gone. This way your mother could preserve them, pass them down. It was on sale at the bookstore, only $15. She showed him a beautiful leather-bound journal with blank pages, simple but elegant. Ethan could already picture his mother's face lighting up. Imagine her filling it with the recipes her own mother had taught her, the ones she made for him growing up. And this, Iris said, pulling out a small frame, is just a simple picture frame. I know it seems basic, but I was thinking about how the best gift is really time and memories. Maybe you could put a photo of the two of you in it, something recent, something that shows you still make time for her despite being so busy. My mom's favorite possession is a picture of us from last year, just a regular day, nothing special, but she looks at it every morning. It reminds her why she works so hard. The frame was plain wood, probably cost less than $10, but the thought behind it was worth more than anything in Tiffany's window. Ethan picked it up, running his fingers over the smooth surface, thinking about the last photo he'd taken with his mother, the two of them laughing at her kitchen table over Sunday dinner. The grocery store purchases were ingredients, Iris continued, talking faster now like she was afraid he'd be disappointed. I got stuff to make a home-cooked meal. Not expensive ingredients, just the basics for a really good homemade chicken soup. I thought maybe you could cook it for her yourself or cook it with her. My mom always says the best gifts aren't things you buy but time you spend. And the pharmacy purchase was for a really nice hand cream with lavender, because it's supposed to be soothing for arthritis and it smells like a garden. My mom loves it. She stopped talking and stood there, looking terrified that she'd done everything wrong, that she'd somehow failed this strange task her boss had given her. Ethan couldn't speak for a moment. His throat was tight and his eyes were burning, and he realized with some shock that he was fighting back tears. Here was this young woman who had nothing, who was working multiple shifts to pay for her mother's surgery, who could have taken his unlimited credit card and changed her entire life, bought herself a car or paid off debts or secured her future. Instead, she'd spent $128 on thoughtful, meaningful gifts for a woman she'd never met, guided only by empathy and genuine kindness. Iris, he finally managed. This is perfect. Everything about this is absolutely perfect. Her whole face transformed with relief. Really? I was so worried. I kept thinking maybe I should buy something more expensive, something that looked more impressive, but it just felt wrong. These things felt right, felt real, and I couldn't. She trailed off, looking embarrassed. Ethan reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope he'd prepared earlier, unsure if he'd need it. Inside was a check for $50,000. This is for you, he said, holding it out. For your mother's surgery and whatever else you need. Iris's eyes went wide with shock. She took a step back, shaking her head. No, Mr. Cole, I can't accept that. I didn't do this for money. I just tried to help, tried to pick good gifts like you asked. Please don't think I was expecting some kind of reward. I know you weren't, Ethan said gently. That's exactly why I want you to have it. Because you proved something I desperately needed to know. That there are still good people in this world, people who do the right thing even when they could benefit from doing wrong. You could have spent tens of thousands today and I wouldn't have questioned it. But you spent what the gifts actually cost because you weren't thinking about you. You were thinking about someone else, a stranger, and what would genuinely help her. Iris stood frozen, staring at the check like it might disappear if she blinked. That's more money than I've ever seen in my life, she whispered. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take it. Say you'll get your mother the surgery she needs and maybe take a day off once in a while. Say you'll stop working yourself to exhaustion for minimum wage. Slowly, with shaking hands, Iris took the check. Tears started rolling down her cheeks and she tried to wipe them away quickly, embarrassed. Thank you, she managed through her crying. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means. My mom, she's been in pain for so long, and I've been trying to save up, but it was going to take years, and now she can get help, she can finally get help. Ethan felt something shift inside him, something fundamental. 4 days he'd been drowning in Olivia's betrayal, questioning everything about himself and his judgment and his worth. But watching Iris cry tears of gratitude over being able to help her mother, he realized something crucial. Olivia's deception said nothing about him. It said everything about her. And there were still people like Iris in the world, people who hadn't been corrupted by greed or selfishness, people who valued love and family over luxury. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said after Iris had composed herself a bit. "Why did you pick those specific things? You could have researched expensive gifts online, found the most costly items to impress me. Why the compression sleeve and the recipe journal?" Iris wiped her eyes and gave him a small, sad smile. "Because money doesn't fix everything, Mr. Cole. I know people think it does, especially people who don't have it, but it doesn't. My mom has been in pain every single day for years, and what helps isn't expensive medications or fancy treatments. It's small comforts. It's knowing someone sees her struggle and cares about it. That compression sleeve costs $67, but it's worth more than a $1,000 bracelet because it actually helps. And the recipe journal, that's about legacy, about preserving what matters. My grandmother died and took all her stories with her, all her wisdom, all the little things that made our family unique. I don't want that to happen to anyone else if I can help it." She looked down at her worn shoes, her voice getting quieter. "I've cleaned offices for rich people for 6 months now. I see what they buy, what they value. Expensive art they never look at, designer clothes they wear once, cars that cost more than my mom's house. And a lot of them seem miserable anyway. They have everything and nothing at the same time. So when you asked me to buy a gift with no limit, I didn't think about what costs the most. I thought about what matters most. And what matters is feeling seen, feeling valued, feeling like someone understands your pain and wants to ease it even a little bit." Ethan sat down heavily in his chair. Overwhelmed by the simple wisdom of this young woman whose society probably dismissed as just a cleaning lady. She understood things that people with multiple degrees and decades of experience didn't get. She understood that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought, only given freely through attention and care and genuine love. "You're a remarkable person, Iris," he said quietly. "I hope you know that." She blushed and shook her head. "I'm just trying to be decent, sir. That's all any of us should do." After Iris left, clutching her check and promising tearfully to name her firstborn child after him, Ethan sat alone with the gifts she'd chosen. He picked up the compression sleeve and imagined his mother's face when he gave it to her, when she realized he'd noticed her pain, that he'd thought about her comfort. He opened the recipe journal and could already see it filled with her handwriting, her stories, her love translated into food and memories. And the simple wooden frame sat there, waiting for a moment of connection to preserve. His phone buzzed. Another message from Brian. More photos, more videos, more evidence of Olivia's ongoing betrayal. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Ethan didn't feel destroyed by it. He felt clear. He picked up his phone and finally, did what he should have done days ago. He called Olivia. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Hey baby. I was just looking at wedding cake designs. There's this amazing bakery that does." "I know about Brian," Ethan said calmly. The silence on the other end was deafening. He could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out what to say, how to play this, whether to deny or confess or attack. "Ethan, I don't know what you're talking about," she said finally, her voice uncertain. "Yes you do. He's been sending me photos and videos for days. I've seen everything, Olivia. Everything." More silence. Then, in a completely different voice, cold and hard, she said, "How long have you known? Does it matter?" "I guess not." The mask was completely off now. No more sweet fiancée, no more loving girlfriend. Just the real Olivia, whoever that was. "It was the money, wasn't it?" Ethan asked, surprised by how steady his voice was. "That's all it ever was." Olivia laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Don't act so surprised. You knew what you were getting when you picked me. A beautiful woman who looked perfect on your arm, who said the right things at your business dinners, who made you look successful and desirable. That's what rich men want, right? A trophy? Well, congratulations, you got one." "I wanted a partner," Ethan said quietly. "Someone who actually loved me." "Love doesn't pay for penthouses and designer dresses and trips to Paris," Olivia snapped. "You want to know the truth? Brian is broke. He's a bartender who can barely make rent. But at least when he touches me it's real. At least when we're together, I don't have to pretend to be interested in quarterly earnings or business acquisitions or any of the boring nonsense your life revolves around. Then why stay? Why plan a wedding? Why keep up the charade? Because Brian being real doesn't pay my bills, she said bluntly. I was going to marry you, let you worship me and buy me everything I wanted and keep seeing Brian on the side. Best of both worlds. But clearly that plan is shot now. The casual cruelty of it took Ethan's breath away. She'd been planning this all along, a lifetime of using him for his money while getting her emotional needs met elsewhere. He was just an ATM to her, a means to an end. The wedding is off, Ethan said. Obviously. I'll have my lawyers draw up paperwork for you to return the ring and anything else I've given you. And Olivia? Get out of my penthouse tonight. I don't want you there when I get home. Fine, she said coldly. Have fun being rich and alone, Ethan. That's all you'll ever be. You're too boring, too careful, too obsessed with being good for any woman to actually love you. Your money is the only interesting thing about you. She hung up. Ethan sat there holding his dead phone, waiting for the devastation to hit, for the pain of her words to sink in and destroy him. But it didn't come. Instead, he felt something unexpected. Relief. And underneath that, something even more surprising. Hope. Because in the span of one day he'd learned something crucial. He'd learned that his judgment wasn't broken. He'd tested Iris with unlimited funds and she'd proven herself to be exactly who she appeared to be, kind and thoughtful and genuine. Which meant Olivia hadn't destroyed his ability to see people clearly. He'd seen her clearly too, actually. Somewhere deep down he'd probably always known she was too perfect, too agreeable, too carefully constructed. He just wanted the fairy tale so badly he'd ignored the warning signs. But now he knew. Now he could see. And what he saw was that there were still good people in the world, people like Iris who did the right thing even when the wrong thing would benefit them more. People who valued love and family and authenticity over wealth and status and luxury. People who could be trusted. Ethan stood and gathered the gifts Iris had chosen, holding them carefully like the precious things they were. Not because of their monetary value but because of what they represented. Proof that goodness still existed. Proof that he could still recognize it. Proof that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't doomed to a life of being used and deceived by people who only saw his bank account. He thought about his father's words about money revealing who people truly are. Iris had been revealed as someone extraordinary. Olivia had been revealed as someone hollow. And Ethan himself had been revealed as someone who still had the capacity to trust, to hope, to believe in human decency. It was enough. For now it was enough. The next morning Ethan arrived at his mother's house with the gifts Iris had chosen and ingredients for homemade soup. Patricia opened the door in her usual cheerful way, surprised to see him on a weekday morning. Sweetheart. What are you doing here? Don't you have meetings? I cleared my schedule, Ethan said, kissing her cheek. I wanted to spend the day with you. And I brought presents. His mother's eyes lit up the way they always did, not because she wanted things but because she loved that he thought of her. They spent the morning in her small, cozy kitchen, making soup together the way they used to when he was young, and she was teaching him that love tasted like garlic and onions sautéing in butter. He told her about Iris, about the test, about what the young woman had chosen. Patricia listened with tears in her eyes, especially when he gave her the compression sleeve. She was right, his mother said softly, sliding it onto her aching hand. This does help. What a thoughtful, wonderful girl. You should keep her close, Ethan. People like that are rare. I know, Mom. And Olivia? Patricia asked gently. I notice you're not wearing your ring either. Ethan had forgotten his mother noticed everything. He told her the truth, all of it, expecting her to be shocked or disappointed. Instead, she just nodded slowly. I had my concerns, she admitted. She was always so perfect, so polished. Real love is messier than that, sweetheart. It's arguing about whose turn it is to take out the trash and laughing at inside jokes nobody else understands and choosing to stay even when things are hard. Olivia always seemed to be performing, never just being. I should have seen it sooner, Ethan said. Maybe. Or maybe you needed to learn this lesson. Your father used to say that the worst heartbreaks teach us the most important things about ourselves. Now you know what to look for. Now you know the difference between someone who loves you and someone who loves what you can give them. They finished making the soup together, and as they sat eating it, Ethan felt something settle in his chest. Peace maybe. Or acceptance. The wedding was off, his heart was bruised, his trust had been shattered. But he wasn't broken. He was just wiser. His phone rang. It was his head of security at the office building. Mr. Cole, sorry to bother you, but there's a situation. Miss Chin, the cleaning woman? She didn't show up for her shift last night or this morning. Her supervisor is concerned because she's never missed a day before. I thought you might want to know since I saw her meeting with you the other night. Ethan's stomach dropped. Had something happened? Had someone hurt her trying to take the check? Had her mother's condition worsened? Give me her address, he said immediately. I'm going to check on her. Within the hour, Ethan was standing outside a rundown apartment building in a neighborhood his GPS had warned him about 3 times. The building was barely standing, with broken windows covered in plastic and graffiti covering every surface. He climbed 4 flights of stairs that smelled like mildew and chemicals, his designer shoes completely out of place on the cracked concrete steps. Apartment 4C had a door that didn't quite close all the way. Ethan knocked, his heart pounding with worry. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Iris? It's Ethan Cole. Your supervisor said you didn't come to work. I wanted to make sure you're okay. He heard movement inside, then the door opened a crack. Iris stood there looking worse than he'd ever seen her. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, her face was pale, and she looked like she hadn't slept at all. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I should have called in properly, I should have followed protocol, but everything happened so fast and I just couldn't think straight and… Iris, what happened? Are you hurt? Did someone try to take the check? No, nothing like that. It's my mom. I took her to the hospital last night to finally get the surgery scheduled with the money you gave me, but when they did the preoperative test they found something else. Something the other doctors missed because we couldn't afford comprehensive testing before. She has cancer, Mr. Cole. Stage 4. They said the surgery for her original condition doesn't matter anymore because the cancer is everywhere and she probably only has a few months left, maybe less, and all that money you gave me, all that hope, it doesn't matter because I'm going to lose her anyway. Iris broke down completely, sobbing so hard she could barely stand. Ethan didn't think. He just stepped forward and caught her as her legs gave out, holding her up while she cried into his shoulder, her whole body shaking with grief. Over her shoulder, he could see into the tiny apartment. One room, barely furnished, with a small bed in the corner where an older woman lay sleeping fitfully. Medical equipment beeped quietly. The whole place was spotlessly clean despite its poverty, everything organized and cared for with the same attention to detail Iris brought to her work. I'm so sorry, Ethan said quietly, meaning it with every fiber of his being. I'm so sorry, Iris. I don't know what to do, she whispered against his chest. I don't know how to lose her. She's all I have. She's everything. And I was so happy yesterday, so grateful, thinking I could finally help her, finally make her comfortable, and now it's all meaningless because she's dying and there's nothing I can do about it. Ethan held this young woman who'd shown him what real goodness looked like, who'd chosen compassion over greed, who'd thought of his mother with more care than his own fiancée ever had, and he made a decision. That's not true, he said firmly. There's plenty we can do. First, we're moving your mother to the best cancer treatment center in the country. I know the head of oncology at Memorial. They're doing experimental treatments, cutting-edge research. If anyone can help her, they can. Iris pulled back, looking up at him with desperate hope in her eyes. Mr. Cole, I couldn't ask you to do that. The cost would be… I don't care about the cost. Your mother deserves the best care available. So do you? And second, you're not going through this alone. You have me now. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'm here. That's a promise. Why? Iris asked, tears still streaming down her face. Why would you do this for us? You barely know me. Ethan thought about his father, about the values he'd been raised with, about the test he'd given Iris and how she'd passed it so completely it had restored his faith in humanity. He thought about Olivia and Brian and all the people who'd tried to use him for his money. And he thought about this brave young woman who'd had every reason to take advantage and instead had chosen kindness. Because you deserve it, he said simply. Because your mother raised someone extraordinary, and that tells me she's extraordinary too. Because you showed me something I desperately needed to see. That's worth more than any amount of money I could spend. Iris started crying again, but this time with something that looked like gratitude mixed with her grief. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You don't have to. Just let me help. Please. She nodded, exhausted and overwhelmed, and Ethan pulled out his phone to start making calls. Within hours he had everything arranged. An ambulance would transfer Iris's mother to Memorial Hospital that afternoon. A team of specialists would evaluate her case. The best oncologist in the country would personally oversee her treatment. And Iris would stay in a comfortable apartment near the hospital, all expenses paid, so she could be close to her mother without worrying about rent or bills or anything except being there for the woman who'd raised her. As Ethan coordinated everything, watching hope slowly return to Iris's face, he realized something profound. This was what his wealth was supposed to be for. Not penthouses and sports cars and impressing people who didn't really care about him. But this. Making a real difference in the lives of people who deserved help, who'd been dealt unfair hands, who just needed someone to see them and care. His father would have approved. His mother definitely did when he called to tell her what was happening. And Ethan himself felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Real, meaningful purpose. The kind of thing that made all those 18-hour days and sacrifices and years of building worth it. Because what was the point of having unlimited resources if you didn't use them to help people who would use them wisely, who would treasure them, who would pay them forward in kindness to others? As the sun set over the city that evening, Ethan stood in the hospital waiting room while Iris sat with her mother, explaining everything that was happening. Through the window, he could see them holding hands, Iris's mother looking weak but grateful, Iris looking exhausted but no longer completely hopeless. And Ethan understood something he maybe should have known all along. The credit card test hadn't been about finding out who Iris was. He'd known that from the start, really, from watching her work with such dedication, from seeing her read Pride and Prejudice in the break room, from the way she talked about her mother with such obvious love. The test had been about finding out who he still was, underneath the betrayal and the hurt and the cynicism that Olivia's deception had created. And he'd found the answer. He was still his father's son. Still his mother's child. Still someone who could recognize goodness and choose to nurture it rather than exploit it. Still someone who believed that the best things in life couldn't be bought, only earned through authentic connection and genuine care. Olivia had tested him too in her own way. And he'd failed her test, failed to be interesting enough or exciting enough or whatever it was she actually wanted. But he'd passed his own test. The one that actually mattered. His phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. The paperwork was ready for Olivia to sign, releasing her from any claim to his assets or property. She'd already moved out of the penthouse, taking only what she'd brought into the relationship. There was no fight, no drama. She'd simply walked away, probably into Brian's arms, leaving Ethan's life as easily as she'd entered it. And standing there in that hospital waiting room, watching Iris comfort her dying mother with more grace and strength than most people could manage, Ethan realized he didn't care. Olivia could have Brian and whatever shallow existence they built together. Ethan had something better. He had his integrity intact. He had the knowledge that he could still trust his instincts about people. He had the opportunity to make a real difference in lives that mattered. And maybe someday he'd have another chance at love. Real love, the messy, complicated, authentic kind his mother had described. The kind that chose to stay not because of what you could buy but because of who you were underneath all the wealth and status and power. For now though, this was enough. Being here, being helpful, being the kind of man his father had raised him to be. That was more than enough. It was everything. Iris came out of her mother's room looking drained but somehow lighter than before. She wants to thank you, she said softly. She can't believe a stranger would do all this for us. I'm not a stranger anymore, Ethan said gently. I'm a friend. If you'll have me. Iris smiled, a real genuine smile that reached her eyes despite the tears still clinging to her lashes. I'd like that very much, Mr. Cole. Ethan. Please just call me Ethan. Okay. Ethan. They stood there in the fluorescent hospital lighting, two people from completely different worlds brought together by a simple test of character that had revealed so much more than either of them expected. And as Ethan followed Iris back into her mother's room to properly introduce himself, he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope for the future, whatever it might bring, knowing he was ready to face it as himself, fully and authentically, without pretense or protection, just a man trying to do good in whatever ways he could. It was a beginning. Not of a love story, not yet, but of something equally important. A story of faith restored, of goodness recognized and rewarded, of two souls finding unexpected connection in the midst of grief and betrayal and the messy, complicated reality of being human. And sometimes those stories mattered most of all. 6 months had passed since that day in the hospital when Ethan had promised to help Iris and her mother, and the city outside his office window looked exactly the same while everything in his life had fundamentally changed. The experimental treatment at Memorial Hospital had worked beyond anyone's expectations, and Iris's mother, Helen Chin, was now in complete remission, something the doctors called a minor miracle but what Ethan privately believed was the result of excellent medical care combined with a woman's sheer determination to stay alive for her daughter. Iris had insisted on returning to work after the first month of treatment, refusing to let Ethan support her indefinitely despite his protests, but he'd compromised by offering her a position as his personal assistant, a role that paid significantly more than cleaning offices and allowed her to use her sharp mind and natural organizational skills. She transformed his chaotic schedule into something manageable, anticipated his needs before he voiced them, and brought a warmth to the sterile corporate environment that made even the most stressful days bearable. What Ethan hadn't anticipated was how much her presence would come to mean to him, how he'd started looking forward to their morning coffee discussions about everything from business strategy to the books they were both reading, how her laugh had become his favorite sound in the entire building, how the sight of her walking into his office could shift his entire mood from frustrated to calm in seconds. He tried to ignore it at first, telling himself he was just grateful for her friendship, that his feelings were nothing more than appreciation for someone who'd helped him rediscover his faith in humanity. But he was lying to himself and he knew it. Somewhere between the hospital visits and the late-night work sessions and the quiet moments of shared understanding, Ethan had fallen completely and irreversibly in love with Iris Chen. The realization had hit him 3 weeks ago during a particularly mundane moment. They'd been reviewing quarterly reports and Iris had made a joke about the marketing department's overuse of the word synergy, and Ethan had looked up from his papers to find her smiling at him with this expression of pure joy, completely unself-conscious and genuine, and his heart had simply stopped beating for a second before starting up again with crystal-clear certainty. This was what love actually felt like. Not the performance he'd had with Olivia, not the carefully constructed romance that looked perfect from the outside while being hollow at its core. This was real, this wanting to hear about someone's day and caring about their opinions and feeling physically lighter when they walked into a room. This was what his parents had, what he'd been searching for his entire adult life without knowing exactly what he was looking for until he found it. The problem was that Ethan had no idea if Iris felt the same way, and the power dynamic between them made everything impossibly complicated. He was her employer, the man who'd saved her mother's life, someone she might feel obligated to please regardless of her true feelings. The last thing he wanted was to make her uncomfortable or to pressure her into something she didn't want because she felt she owed him. So he'd kept quiet, treasuring their friendship while his feelings grew stronger every single day, until the weight of unspoken words felt like it might crush him. His mother had noticed, of course, because Patricia Cole noticed everything when it came to her son. She'd met Iris several times over the past months, had fallen in love with her immediately the way Ethan knew she would, and had started making pointed comments about how well they worked together, how Iris made him smile in ways Olivia never had, how some of the best love stories started with friendship and respect. "Don't wait too long," Patricia had warned him just last Sunday over their usual dinner. "Life is short and unpredictable. You've already wasted time on the wrong person. Don't waste more time being afraid to reach for the right one." But fear was exactly what kept Ethan paralyzed, fear of losing what they had, fear of ruining the best friendship he'd ever had, fear of being rejected and having to see that rejection on Iris's face every single day at work. So he stayed silent and suffered and tried to be content with whatever pieces of her life she was willing to share. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday in November when Iris burst into his office looking more upset than he'd ever seen her, her mascara smudged from crying, her professional composure completely shattered. Ethan was on his feet immediately, his heart racing with concern. "What happened? Is it your mother? Is she sick again?" "No, Mom's fine, she's perfect actually," Iris said, her voice shaking. "It's something else. I just got a call from my landlord. The building I've been living in, the one you helped me get after Mom went into the hospital, it's being sold. The new owners are converting it to luxury condos and everyone has to be out in 30 days. I've been looking for apartments all morning but everything in a safe neighborhood costs more than I can afford even with my new salary, and the places I can afford are worse than where I started, and I just don't know what to do because I can't go back to that horrible apartment where Mom and I used to live. It's not safe and she's still recovering and needs somewhere clean and quiet, but I can't find anything and I'm trying not to panic but I'm completely panicking." She said it all in one breath, the words tumbling out faster and faster, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest, a decision forming before he could overthink it. "Move in with me," he said. Iris froze, her tear-stained face going blank with shock. "What?" "Move in with me. Into my penthouse. I have 4 bedrooms that sit completely empty. Your mother can have her own space with a view of the park, you'll each have privacy and safety, and you won't have to worry about rent or leases or any of it." Ethan was talking faster now, the idea taking shape as he spoke. "I know it's unconventional, I know it might seem like too much, but Iris, you're my closest friend and I can't stand the thought of you stressed and scrambling for housing when I have more space than I could ever use. Please let me do this. Not as your employer or as some charitable gesture, but as someone who cares about you and wants to help." Iris stared at him for a long moment, emotions flickering across her face too quickly for him to read. "Ethan, I can't just move into your home. People would talk, they'd assume things, and besides, you've already done so much for us. The hospital bills, this job, everything. I can't keep taking from you. You're not taking anything. You've given me so much more than you realize." Ethan moved closer, his voice dropping to something softer, more honest. "These past 6 months have been the best of my life. You've made everything better just by being in it. Coming to work doesn't feel like an obligation anymore, it feels like getting to spend time with someone I genuinely enjoy. You challenge me and make me laugh and remind me every day what actually matters in life. So please don't think of this as charity or as me doing you a favor. Think of it as me being selfish, wanting to keep the best thing in my life close." Something shifted in Iris's expression, a vulnerability appearing that he'd never seen before. "The best thing in your life?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Ethan said simply, deciding that if he was already risking everything by inviting her to live with him, he might as well risk complete honesty. "You are. You have been for months now. I didn't plan for this to happen, I didn't expect to feel this way, but Iris, you've become the most important person in my world and I can't imagine my days without you in them." Iris took a shaky breath, fresh tears forming in her eyes, but these looked different from the panicked ones she'd arrived with. "I thought I was imagining it," she whispered. "The way you look at me sometimes, the way you remember every little detail I mention, the way you always make sure I eat lunch because you know I forget when I'm busy. I thought it was wishful thinking because I've been falling in love with you since the day you gave me that credit card and trusted me when you had no reason to." The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment as Ethan processed what she'd just said. "You're in love with me? How could I not be?" Iris said, her voice breaking. "You're the kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. You saved my mother's life, not for recognition or to impress me but because you actually cared about a stranger's suffering. You see people really see them, including me. You make me feel valued and respected and like I matter beyond what I can do for you. Every day I come to work and try to be professional and appropriate and not reveal how I feel because you're my boss and you could have anyone. Why would you want someone like me, someone from nothing with no education and no sophistication?" And Ethan closed the distance between them in 2 strides and kissed her, cutting off her words with his lips, pouring 6 months of suppressed longing into that single moment of connection. Iris made a small surprised sound and then she was kissing him back, her arms wrapping around his neck, her fingers threading into his hair, and everything that had felt complicated suddenly became the simplest thing in the world. This was right. This was real. This was everything. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers and laughed with pure relief. "You're wrong about so many things," he said softly. "You're not from nothing, you're from a loving home that taught you actual values. You have more wisdom and emotional intelligence than people with multiple degrees. And sophistication is just a word people use to describe knowing which fork to use at fancy dinners. None of that matters, Iris. What matters is that you're you. Brave and kind and genuine and so beautiful it hurts to look at you sometimes. I don't want sophistication or pedigree or whatever else you think you're lacking. I want you exactly as you are for the rest of my life if you'll have me." Iris started crying again but she was smiling through the tears, her whole face radiant with happiness. "Yes," she said. "Yes to all of it. Moving in, being with you, everything. Yes." They kissed again, slower this time, savoring it, and Ethan felt something broken inside him finally heal completely. Olivia's betrayal had left scars, had made him doubt himself and his judgment and his worth. But Iris had shown him that his heart wasn't wrong, it had just been looking in the wrong places. Real love wasn't about performance or transaction or what you could get from someone. It was about genuine connection, about choosing someone every day, about building something together based on trust and respect and authentic affection. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change that felt more right than anything Ethan had experienced in years. Iris and Helen moved into the penthouse, and the empty space that had felt cold and sterile suddenly became a home. Helen transformed the kitchen into a warm haven where she cooked elaborate meals and taught Ethan family recipes, insisting that any man who wanted to be with her daughter needed to know how to properly make dumplings from scratch. Iris filled the space with books and laughter and the kind of comfortable domesticity that Ethan had never realized he was craving. They established rhythms and routines, morning coffee together before work, evening walks when the weather allowed, quiet nights reading side by side on the couch, and slowly, carefully, Ethan showed Iris his world while she showed him hers, each of them learning to navigate the merge of 2 very different lives into something beautifully unified. But not everyone was happy about their relationship. The news spread through the company quickly, as office gossip always did, and reactions were mixed. Some people were genuinely happy for them, having watched their friendship develop over months and recognizing real affection when they saw it. But others whispered about impropriety, about a powerful executive taking advantage of someone who'd once cleaned his office, about how Iris must have planned this from the beginning, using her poverty and her mother's illness to manipulate Ethan into falling for her. The rumors got back to Iris within a week, and Ethan came home one evening to find her sitting on the balcony overlooking the city, looking smaller and sadder than he'd seen her since her mother's diagnosis. "They think I'm using you," she said quietly when he sat down beside her. "They think this whole thing is some elaborate scheme, that I'm no better than Olivia except I'm pretending to be poor and sweet instead of rich and beautiful." Ethan's jaw tightened with anger at whoever had made her feel this way. The opinion of people who don't know you doesn't matter, Iris. They're projecting their own cynicism onto something they don't understand. But what if they're right? What if subconsciously I did manipulate this situation? You gave me that credit card and I could have disappeared with it, but I didn't, and maybe some part of me knew that would impress you, that it would make you see me differently. Maybe I'm not as genuine as we both want to believe. Iris looked at him with such vulnerability it broke his heart. "I never want you to wonder if I love you for you or for what you can provide. I never want you to look at me the way you must have looked at Olivia when you found out the truth." Ethan took her hands in his, holding them gently but firmly, making sure she was looking at him when he spoke. "Do you remember what you bought with that credit card? The compression sleeve, the recipe journal, the ingredients for soup, the simple picture frame. Those weren't the choices of someone trying to manipulate me, Iris. Those were the choices of someone who genuinely cares about other people's well-being more than her own gain. You could have bought yourself a car, paid off debts, secured your future. Instead, you spent $128 on thoughtful gifts for a stranger's mother. That's who you are at your core." He brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles softly. "And even if some tiny unconscious part of you hoped I'd notice your kindness, so what? Isn't that what we all want? To be seen and valued for our best qualities? You showed me your character through your actions and I fell in love with what I saw. There's no manipulation in that, just two people recognizing something real in each other." Iris's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "How do you always know exactly what to say?" "I don't," Ethan admitted. "I mess up constantly. I'm learning how to do this, how to be in a real relationship with someone who actually matters. But I'm trying and I'll keep trying every day because you're worth it. We're worth it." They sat together as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, and Ethan made a decision. If people were going to talk anyway, if Iris was going to be subjected to rumors and speculation no matter what they did, then he might as well give them something real to talk about. Something that would leave no doubt about his intentions or his feelings or the seriousness of their relationship. 3 months later, on a crisp February evening, Ethan took Iris back to the place where everything had started, his office building after hours when it was quiet and empty except for the night cleaning crew. He'd arranged everything carefully, transforming the conference room where he'd first really noticed Iris scrubbing windows into something beautiful, with candles and flowers and soft music playing. Iris looked around in confusion when he led her inside. "Ethan, what is all this?" "This is where I first saw you," he said, pulling her to the center of the room. "Really saw you, I mean. You were cleaning these windows with such focus and dedication, and I remember thinking about my mother, about people who work hard and stay genuine despite difficult circumstances. I didn't know then that you would change my entire life, but some part of me recognized something special in you even in that first moment." He knelt down, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket, and Iris's hands flew to her mouth as she realized what was happening. "Iris Chin, you tested my faith in humanity and restored it completely. You showed me what real love looks like, what genuine goodness looks like, what it means to choose kindness even when selfishness would benefit you more. You've made my life infinitely better just by being in it, and I don't want to spend another day without knowing you'll be in all my tomorrows." Ethan opened the box, revealing a ring that he'd spent weeks designing, a simple elegant band with a single perfect diamond, nothing ostentatious or overdone, just beautiful and real like Iris herself. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life being worthy of the love you've given me?" Iris was crying openly now, nodding before she could even get words out. "Yes," she managed finally. "Yes, absolutely yes, 1,000 times yes." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and certainty he felt. Around them, the city sparkled with lights, millions of lives being lived, but in that moment their world narrowed to just the two of them, two people who'd found each other through the strangest circumstances and built something real from it. The engagement announcement made waves exactly as Ethan had anticipated. Some people were thrilled, seeing it as a beautiful modern love story. Others were scandalized, unable to believe that a billionaire would seriously marry someone who'd once cleaned his office. The gossip columns had a field day with it, running stories with headlines like From Maid to Mrs. Cole, a modern Cinderella story, and Billionaire's shocking engagement to former employee raises questions. Ethan's business associates called him crazy, warning him that Iris was clearly after his money despite all evidence to the contrary. A few of his wealthier friends suggested he get a prenuptial agreement, protect his assets, guard against the inevitable moment when Iris showed her true colors. But Ethan didn't care about any of it. He knew the truth. He knew Iris's character had been tested more thoroughly than any prenup could protect against, and she'd proven herself to be exactly who she appeared to be. Genuine, kind, thoughtful, and completely incapable of the kind of deception Olivia had managed so effortlessly. The only opinion that mattered to him was his mother's, and Patricia was absolutely delighted, already planning the wedding with Helen and treating Iris like the daughter she'd never had. The real test came 6 weeks before the wedding when an unexpected visitor showed up at Ethan's office. His assistant Karen buzzed through looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Cole, there's someone here to see you. Olivia Sterling. She doesn't have an appointment but she's insisting it's urgent." Ethan felt his stomach tighten but he kept his voice calm. "Send her in." Olivia walked through the door looking exactly as he remembered, beautiful and polished and perfectly put together, wearing an expensive dress and carrying a designer handbag, every inch the sophisticated woman she'd always been. But Ethan looked at her now and felt nothing except mild curiosity about why she was here. "Ethan," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "You look good. Success agrees with you. What do you want, Olivia? Right to the point. I always admired that about you." She sat down uninvited, crossing her legs elegantly. "I heard about your engagement. To the cleaning girl. It's all over social media, people can't stop talking about it. Her name is Iris and she's not a cleaning girl, she's my assistant and my fiancée. Again, what do you want?" Olivia's smile turned sad, almost wistful. "I made a mistake, Ethan. Leaving you, choosing Brian, throwing away what we had. I realize that now. He's exactly what I said he was, broke and going nowhere, and I've been miserable trying to make it work with someone who can't provide the life I'm accustomed to." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to something intimate and conspiratorial. "I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. But we were good together once before I got stupid and selfish. We could be good again. Better, even, because now I know what I lost." Ethan stared at her, genuinely baffled. "You think I'd take you back? After everything you did? I think you're a good man who believes in second chances. And I think you're about to make a huge mistake marrying someone so far beneath you that people are literally laughing about it behind your back." Olivia's voice took on an edge now. "Come on, Ethan. A cleaning woman? Someone with no education, no refinement, no understanding of your world? You're setting yourself up for embarrassment. She'll never fit in with your colleagues, she'll always be that poor girl you rescued out of pity or guilt or some misguided sense of charity." The words were designed to cut, to plant seeds of doubt, to make Ethan question his choice. A year ago they might have worked. A year ago he'd been so desperate for love that he'd overlooked every red flag with Olivia, convinced himself that what they had was real despite all evidence to the contrary. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who knew the difference between performance and authenticity, between someone who loved what you had and someone who loved who you were. "You're right about one thing," Ethan said calmly. "Iris is nothing like you. She's kind where you're cruel, genuine where you're calculated, selfless where you're selfish. She values love and family over money and status. She sees people as human beings instead of transactions. And you're also right that she'll never fit into my world because she's too good for it, too real for the fake polished surface where people like you thrive." He stood up, walking to the door and opening it, a clear dismissal. "I tested Iris with unlimited access to my wealth, and she spent $128 on thoughtful gifts for someone she'd never met. You had unlimited access to my heart and you spent it on betrayal and lies. So if you came here thinking I'd be interested in going backwards, you've wasted your time. I'm marrying Iris in 6 weeks, and it will be the best decision I've ever made, because she's the best person I've ever known. Now get out of my office and don't come back." Olivia stood slowly, her mask of sophistication slipping to reveal something ugly underneath. "You'll regret this. When the novelty wears off and you realize you've tied yourself to someone who can't match you intellectually or socially, when you're embarrassed by her at business dinners and charity galas, you'll wish you'd listened to me." "No," Ethan said simply. "I won't. Because, unlike you, Iris has something money can't buy and performance can't fake. She has character. She has integrity. She has a good heart. And those things don't wear off or fade with time. They're real and they matter more than anything you've ever valued. Olivia left without another word, and Ethan closed the door behind her, feeling lighter than he had in months. That night, he told Iris about the visit, about Olivia's attempt to win him back, about the warnings that Iris would never fit in his world. Iris listened quietly, her expression unreadable. "Are you worried she's right?" she asked finally. "About me not fitting in?" Ethan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her and breathing in the vanilla scent of her shampoo. "I'm worried that my world isn't good enough for you. That the fake shallow surface of business dinners and charity galas and networking events will drain the genuine warmth that makes you who you are. But I'm not worried about you fitting in because you fit perfectly in the only place that matters. Right here with me in this life we're building together." The wedding took place 6 weeks later in his mother's garden, a small intimate ceremony with only people who genuinely mattered in attendance. Helen was there, healthy and beaming, crying happy tears as she watched her daughter marry the man who'd saved her life. Patricia was there, crying even harder, thrilled to finally have the daughter she'd always wanted. A few of Ethan's closest friends attended, the ones who'd seen his relationship with Iris develop and recognized it as something special. And that was it. No elaborate venue, no hundreds of guests who barely knew them, no performance for society or the business world. Just two people who loved each other, making promises in front of the people they loved most, starting their lives together with honesty and hope and genuine joy. As Ethan slipped a simple gold band onto Iris's finger, matching the engagement ring he'd given her, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain of Olivia's betrayal that had nearly destroyed his faith in humanity. The simple test with a credit card that had restored it. The 6 months of friendship that had grown into something deeper. The choice to risk everything by being honest about his feelings. And now this moment, marrying the woman who'd shown him what real love actually looked like. "I love you," he whispered as they were pronounced husband and wife. "I love you too," Iris whispered back. "Thank you for seeing me. For really seeing me." "Thank you for being worth seeing," Ethan replied, and kissed her as their small gathering erupted in applause and cheers. The reception was held in the penthouse, casual and warm and nothing like the elaborate wedding Ethan had been planning with Olivia. They danced to music Helen chose, ate food Patricia and Helen had cooked together, laughed at stories shared by friends who actually cared about them. It was perfect in its imperfection, real in its simplicity, meaningful in ways 1,000-guest extravaganza never could have been. Late that night, after everyone had gone home and they were alone in the penthouse that had become their home, Iris found Ethan standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her head against his back. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how different my life is now compared to a year ago. How I was engaged to someone who didn't love me, building a future on lies, thinking money could buy happiness or security or love. How lost I was without even realizing it." Ethan turned in her arms to face her, his hands coming up to cup her face gently. "And I'm thinking about how a simple test with a credit card changed everything. How your choice to spend $128 on compassionate gifts instead of selfish luxuries showed me that good people still exist, that I could still trust my instincts, that real love was possible if I looked for it in the right places." Iris smiled, her eyes bright with happy tears. "That credit card test was the best thing that ever happened to me. It brought me you, brought my mother the treatment she needed, brought us this life. All because you chose to trust a stranger with something valuable and I chose to honor that trust." "You did more than honor it," Ethan said softly. "You taught me what actually matters in life. Not wealth or status or impressive surfaces, but genuine connection, authentic kindness, choosing to do right even when wrong would benefit you more. You taught me that the best things in life can't be bought, only earned through being a good person who recognizes goodness in others." They stood together in the quiet darkness, the city sparkling below them, two people who'd found each other through the most unlikely circumstances and built something beautiful from it. Ethan thought about his father's words, about money revealing who people truly were, and realized how profoundly true that was. Olivia's access to wealth had revealed her shallowness and greed. Iris's access to wealth had revealed her compassion and integrity. And Ethan's response to both had revealed what kind of man he'd become. Someone who could learn from betrayal without becoming bitter, who could recognize genuine love when he found it, who could choose authenticity over appearance every single time. In the weeks and months that followed, life settled into something wonderfully ordinary and extraordinarily fulfilling. Iris continued working as Ethan's assistant, ignoring the few remaining critics who thought it was inappropriate, because she was genuinely good at the job and they worked together seamlessly. Helen became a permanent fixture in their home, cooking elaborate meals and spoiling them both, healthy and happy and grateful for every extra day she'd been given. Patricia visited often, becoming best friends with Helen, the two mothers bonding over their shared love for the couple and their shared relief that their children had found genuine partners. Ethan's business continued to thrive, but he approached it differently now, with Iris's influence making him more conscious of how he treated employees, more generous with opportunities for people like she'd once been, more focused on building something meaningful instead of just profitable. He started a foundation that provided medical care for families who couldn't afford it, inspired by Helen's story, wanting to give others the same chance at hope he'd been able to give. And through it all, Ethan and Iris built their life together, day by day, choice by choice, creating something real and lasting based on trust and respect and genuine affection. There were challenges, of course. Merging two very different backgrounds wasn't always smooth. Iris sometimes felt intimidated by the wealth and power surrounding her, worried she'd make social mistakes that would embarrass Ethan. Ethan sometimes forgot that what seemed normal to him, like buying expensive gifts or making large financial decisions, could feel overwhelming to someone who'd grown up counting every penny. But they learned to navigate those differences through communication and patience and a fundamental commitment to seeing each other clearly, to honoring who the other person was instead of trying to change them. 1 year after their wedding, Iris discovered she was pregnant, and the news filled their home with even more joy than Ethan had thought possible. He watched his wife's body change, carrying their child, and marveled at how much his life had transformed. 2 years ago, he'd been engaged to a woman who was cheating on him, building a future on lies, thinking he understood what love and partnership meant. Now he was married to someone who challenged him and supported him and loved him authentically, about to become a father, surrounded by family who genuinely cared about each other. The baby, a girl they named Grace after Ethan's grandmother, was born on a snowy December morning, perfect and healthy and loud. Ethan held his daughter for the first time and cried, overwhelmed by love and gratitude and the knowledge that this was what actually mattered, these moments of genuine connection, this family built on honesty and trust, this life created through choosing good over easy, authentic over impressive, real over fake. As Grace grew, Ethan watched Iris mother their daughter with the same compassion and thoughtfulness she brought to everything, teaching Grace to be kind, to work hard, to value people over possessions, to recognize that wealth was a tool for helping others, not a measure of personal worth. He saw his own mother's influence in Iris's parenting, that same gentle insistence on integrity and respect regardless of circumstances. And he tried to be the father his own dad had been, present and engaged, teaching through example, showing Grace that success meant nothing without character to back it up. On Grace's 3rd birthday, Ethan stood in their living room watching his daughter play with Helen and Patricia, the 3 generations of women laughing together, and Iris came to stand beside him, slipping her hand into his. "Happy?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Beyond measure," Ethan replied honestly. "I keep thinking about that day I gave you my credit card, how uncertain I was, how broken I felt after Olivia. How I was just testing whether good people still existed in the world, whether I could still recognize them. And you gave me so much more than an answer to that question. You gave me everything." Iris squeezed his hand, resting her head on his shoulder. "We gave each other everything. You saved my mother's life, gave me opportunities one never dreamed possible, showed me that good men actually exist, that love doesn't have to be transactional or conditional. We saved each other, really?" Ethan thought about that, about how true it was. He'd saved Iris from poverty and fear and hopelessness. She'd saved him from cynicism and loneliness and a life surrounded by people who only valued his bank account. They'd both been tested in different ways and proven themselves worthy of each other, building something real from the wreckage of his past and the limitations of hers, creating a future neither had expected but both treasured more than anything money could buy. "I love you," he said, the words never getting old, never losing their meaning. "I love you too," Iris replied, the same way she had on their wedding day, the same way she would for all their days to come. And as they stood together watching their daughter play, surrounded by family who loved them, living a life built on authenticity and kindness and genuine connection, Ethan understood something profound. The credit card test hadn't just been about finding out who Iris was or whether good people existed. It had been about discovering what he truly valued, what kind of life he wanted to build, what legacy he wanted to leave. Money had revealed everyone's true nature. Olivia's greed and manipulation. Iris's compassion and integrity. His own capacity for trust and love despite betrayal. And in revealing those truths, It had guided him toward the life he was always meant to live, with the person he was always meant to love, building something that would last long after the money was gone. Because the best things in life really couldn't be bought. They could only be earned through being good, recognizing good, and choosing good every single day. That was the real lesson. That was what mattered. That was everything. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that real love is built on character, not wealth, that genuine goodness still exists in this world, and that the best things in life can't be bought but only earned through integrity and compassion, please subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Your subscription helps us continue sharing stories that matter, stories that inspire, stories that remind us all of what's truly important in life. What did you think of Ethan and Iris's journey? Have you ever had to choose between what looked good and what was actually good? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story that could change how you see the world. Remember, the choices we make when we have power reveal who we truly are. Choose kindness. Choose authenticity. Choose love that's real over love that just looks good. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.